chaos into connection and our purposes into action. I am your host, Mark Intrican, founder of the Achieving Unity Leadership System, available at www.achievingunity.com, which is dedicated to all leaders, personally and professionally, from the smallest family relationship to the largest corporation CEO. This is for everyone in improving their lives through encouraging, inspiring, and including others. EII. We must remember that unity is not a soft skill. It is a leadership discipline. Today, this is one of those conversations that will stay with you long after it is over. Our guest is Mila Johansen. She is a best-selling author, a writing and publishing coach, a playwright, and a speaker. But what makes today's conversation truly special goes beyond her impressive career. Mila carries forward a remarkable family legacy, a dialogue rooted in courage, in purpose, and the fight to ensure women's voices are heard around the world. Mila's grandmother, Jessie Haver Butler, was a suffragette on the front lines of the women's right movement, the suffrage. Jessie worked alongside Alice Paul. Harriet Chapman Catt was endorsed by Eleanor Roosevelt and later shared stages with Gloria Steinem. She was, by every measure, a trailblazer, and Mila grew up at her side, shaped by that strength. Today, we're going to talk about more than books. We're going to share a dialogue about voice, about purpose, and resilience. We're going to talk about the quiet, powerful ways that mothers and grandmothers shape who we become and how their courage often gives the next generation permission to speak up, to lead, and to make a positive difference. So as you listen today, think about the women in your life who helped shape you. What did they pass down to you? What are you passing on? As we listen to Mila and navigate through the division, the frustration, and change that we see around the world today, we are invited to not just see those challenges that we could face, but also face the potentials that exist when people are encouraged, inspired, and included in building a better future together, achieving unity. But first, before we delve into this insightful dialogue, let me briefly introduce my company, Reality Focused Dynamics, where it all began. Excuse me. This is where I started with building the company and learning more about real conversations for leaders, because so many times we're navigating division everywhere we go. We're seeing frustration in all the things that we do. And sometimes that change is just not what we want to see. But what we want to do now is help those small changes turn into long-term improvement. Leadership now feels a little bit harder than it should. For those of us that have been here for a while, think about leadership used to be a little bit easier. Wasn't so much turmoil, wasn't so much regulation, wasn't so much issue about everything. Disconnection is growing today. Frustration is draining people. It's draining teams. Good intentions are colliding with real world pressures. The thing is, these real world pressures didn't just come about. They come from us. We have to remember that our unity, is not a soft skill. It is a leadership strategy that we must work on each and every day, you and I, with all the others. What we mean by achieving unity, what we mean is encouraging progress without enabling dysfunction. We want to make sure that we're agreeing in truth and asking the questions that we need to ask. We want to be able to inspire that action without forcing agreement. How many times people sit in a room and just, yeah, sure. And they take it forward without asking, those confirming questions to find out why, what, who, and how first. We want to talk about including voices while maintaining accountability. We don't just want to include everyone just because. We want to include everyone because we all want the accountabilities and responsibilities that make the world a better place today. We are building better businesses, better lives, and a better world, one conversation, one dialogue at a time. Excuse me. Again, I am your host, Mark Intrican, founder of the Reality Focus Dynamics and the Achieving Unity Leadership System. I work with leaders, teams, families, everyone that's navigating conflict, change, and complexity. I help us move forward with clarity, making the best of our unity and sustainable actions going forward. And how do I do that? I show how being focused is so important. What is focused? A little bit more in a second, because we're going to break it down to each word, but it's to facilitate or facilitating on clear, unified, sustainable execution and delivery. And if you notice, the first letter of each one of those words spell focused. That's also my phone number. If you want to call me, you have your dial handy, your face pad, you can see this 303-362-8733. That is 303 focused. Hope you give me a call. There it is. Focused. Focused. What's it first? Facilitate, or the action of facilitating through tough conversations that build trust, being honest with each other, being transparent. That's when you get focused. You want to be able to facilitate those conversations, and you want to do that on common ground, shared purpose. That's where focus comes in, us working together, a shared purpose going forward on common ground, including everyone that's involved. We also want to be C for clear, have communication, have true agreements with pure explanation. When someone says a word, ask, what does that word mean? Whether it be political, professional, find out what that word means to everyone involved. We want to be U for unified, action across differences, unified in everything that we do. Find out who we are, how we work together. And with that, we want the S in sustainable, results that last, that keep going, not just short term, not like small change, which is short term, but we want it to be long term, as I mentioned earlier, for improvements, long term improvements. Well, execution, we want to have that action, that consistent, responsible action to keep us going forward in a positive direction. And last but not least, that D for delivery, inspired growth and lasting change through continuous process improvement. So please contact us. Let's promote clear, unified, sustainable action starting now, starting right now, today. Reach out to explore my coaching, my courses, my workshops, or speaking engagements to help promote unity and leadership in your home, your family, your community, and your corporation. Again, achievingunity.com or call me, 303-FOCUSED, 303-362-8733. Because achieving unity is the path to stronger relationships, inspired leadership, and lasting change. And don't forget, it's a matter of uncertainty. Make sure that you're in touch with the people that you need to be in touch with, whether it be coaching or through the legal system. You have any troubles in that area, get in contact with me. Go to www.ourstressshield.com, because it shouldn't be a legal shield you're looking at. It should be a stress shield. And let's block that away. And now for our upcoming conversations, just week after week. This is a weekly podcast. Wonderful guests like ours today. It's going to be fun each and every week. Next week, we have Rachel Christina talking about intuitive edge for women. And just to touch on that, this is our first Wednesday in May. So we're starting our May Mother's Day tribute. While mothers, moms, and women And that's what Rachel will come and talk to us about, intuitive edge for women. Week after that, on May 20th, Mindy Green will come. Create the harmonious home you've always imagined. Yes, it's out there. It can happen in our home. We can bring it home and be what we want to be in our families. That's May 20th. Then on May 27th, Cynthia Klein talking about personal boundaries for mom. We want to make sure that we know where that line is, the line we don't want to cross, whether it be with our children, our spouses. How about at work? Where do we put the personal boundaries? Where does mom stand? We'll come back on 527. We'll talk more about that. Then, the first Wednesday in June, Father's Day month, we're going to start talking about the men, the fathers, the dads. And Ronald Allen comes in first and talks about the mom into a father's assets, the wife. How do we work it together? How do we build a better relationship? That's what Ronald will come and talk to us about on June 3rd, the first Wednesday in June. If you'd like to get in touch with me, there's my QR code. Please take a picture of it. In contact with me, go to my website, and you can always call me at 303 Focused. But let's connect. Let's find out how we can put those focused letters into action for each and every one of us. So again, take a picture, get in contact with me. Let's make a connection together. Take tomorrow to be a better place. And now for our guest today, Mila Johansen. On the left, see our QR code to learn more about Mila. Get on YouTube for her writing and publishing make easy. We'll talk more about this in a minute because she'll tell you everyone has a story to tell, and maybe more than one. So to connect with Mila, use the QR code on the right. Go to her Facebook for Mila Johansen. Email johansenmila@gmail.com. Connect with her. Contact her. And again, take a picture. Go ahead and take a picture on your phone now, or go out to her site now, and let's start that communication as we go forward. We're excited to welcome Mila today. She is an international speaker, an author, and writing and publishing coach who helps people turn their ideas, your ideas, into powerful published works. How many stories have you had in your life? One story, a dozen stories, 100 stories? Through her innovative short book concept and leadership of the Cinderella Monologues, which we'll talk a lot about today, the anthology series, Mila provides practical, accessible pathways for individuals to share their voice and message without overwhelm. Her work empowers aspiring authors, speakers, and entrepreneurs to transform their stories into tools for confidence, for leadership, and meaningful impact. Please help me welcome Ms. Mila Johansen.
Well, that's quite an introduction. Thank you.
Mila, it's wonderful to have you here again today. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so
Well,
happy. Thank you
today,
for inviting me.
it's an honor. I mean that because the things we're going to talk about today are things that a lot of us, and as we were talking earlier, things that we don't know sometimes. And there's so much about life that we hear, and the things that you're going to bring forth today about your mom and especially your grandmother and what she did and how she did it. So if you don't mind, take a few minutes to introduce yourself again, and then let's go into the discussion about your grandmother and how each of us, as you mentioned, has a story to tell, but we can also bring that story to life, right?
Yes, everyone has a story. And my story began, living in utter poverty with my mother as a teacher and a single mom. And my brother and I often went to bed without dinner. And he grew up in kind of a gangland. I was a Cinderella. That's why I wrote the Cinderella monologues. So I had to do all the work, and that kind of kept me out of trouble. And he later died in the street. And I don't look like someone who grew up in gangland, but that's what happened. And I had a my grandmother was my saving grace. She took me on and took me around with her, and she's fairly famous, and she fed me. And so when I was really young, I saw the movie Mary Poppins, and I came home. I was 8, and I went into my room, and I started doing chalk drawings because I thought, oh, I can jump in the chalk drawings, and they'll take me to that magical world of penguins and merry-go-rounds. And I can't even draw stick people now, so they probably weren't very good. But I believed it. I closed my eyes and I jumped like about 8 times, and it didn't work. And I still believe it can happen though. But anyway, so then I thought, well, if I can't make the magical world that way, maybe I'll write it like the Oz books. My mother read me all the Oz books, and then I've written 3 into musicals now. Yeah, this one.
Nice.
Yeah, the Ozard of Wiz. But
Positive
anyway,
wins.
then she so I thought, or Nancy Drew. And so I started writing a book. I wrote a page and a half and I quit because I was 8. But I always knew I wanted to be a writer from that age on.
Wow. That's impressive. I still want to be a writer today, and I still want to keep coming to your programs so I can finish off my book. And I do love your programs because you teach so much and teach it so well. But
I just helped 8 people finish their books in the last 6 weeks, and we published them. They're all stacked. They're surrounded by a bookcave of all the books I'm working on.
congratulations. That is exciting. And thank you so much for what you do. But for my life, I never went to bed hungry. That was one thing we did have food, but I always thought of us as lower income because all of my friends just seemed to have more toys and things like that. And of course, my grandmother, grandfather, they weren't well off either. But let's talk a little about yours and how yours went forward because I think some things that my mother taught me, she brought me my positive attitude. I do credit her for that. My dad and I worked together well. He was an engineer, but my grandmother gave me a lot of foundation and a lot of things that we did. But can we sometimes, I think in many families, have one person, that mother, that grandmother, maybe sometimes an aunt, who's found that, like in your case, your grandmother's case, Jesse's case, the full weight of what she gave you only became clear as we grow older. As you grew older and began to truly understand the world that she was working so hard to improve, right?
Yeah, and I would like to mention too that I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me as a kid not having food because there's, still so many kids out there that don't. And I ended up marrying an organic farmer and I have all the food I ever want from then on. So, that was just as childhood. So,
Yeah, right. Yeah,
yes, 1 in 7 children are hungry still. So I like to always speak to that.
that's true. And having that grandmother there for
Oh
you, that
yeah. Oh,
strength in so many ways, it's being the Cinderella with growing up in life with a grandmother like you have. I think it just touches my heart. I know, and
yeah, she lived across the street, so I would go over there and hang out with her all the time. And then she gave me food, and then we'd watch Sunday night Disneyland movies. Do you remember that? We're about the same age, probably. And every Sunday night, Disney would have these great movies, and we'd watch over there. And then she had this huge yard. Now, talk about leadership. She had this huge yard, and she said, Mila, all the kids in the neighborhood would be there playing, and guess who was in the lead? They're all running after you. I was always the leader, even as a little tiny kid. And so anyway, and she just took me under her wing, and that's pretty much why I am who I am today, is being with her. My mother was not available. She taught and she was very sick, so she'd go to bed at
oh,
5.
I'm sorry.
That's why I had to raise my brother and do all the housework and the cooking even from age 10. But it made me a strong worker and a strong person. And then when my husband met me, he lucked out getting a real Cinderella. He'd say, okay, now it's a big organic ranch, go out there and drive tractor for 8 hours. Oh, okay. And we're gonna pack for 14 hours. Oh, okay. So he kind of lucked out that way. But working has given me a great, jump up in the world. And I tell kids that a lot of the young people don't want to work now, they feel entitled. And I say, get a job, even if it's McDonald's, start working your way through everything because work is fun. Work is the way of life. So I'm always trying to encourage young people to embrace work.
That's a great comment because that's one of the things that I talk about is life is what we make it.
Hmm.
So let's make it awesome together, achieving unity because what we do makes a better tomorrow. Because I've in that challenge, I've been in that challenge before about what can I do? I don't want to work here. I don't want to work there. But that work, as you're saying, is a way to learn and is a way to build going forward, right?
I think young people need to work those grunt labor jobs to work, to learn to work and to get it out of them and then appreciate their jobs later. I think when they're handed a big job right from the beginning, I don't think that serves them unless it just turns into their work. I mean, come on, the guy who did Facebook, he was at Harvard, right? And he quit Harvard and started Facebook. So, okay, those things happen, but I think kids need to learn to work. I mean, really work with their hands and everything. They say now that kids aren't learning handwriting, and so they're going to have a missing link, and they might not be as smart as what our generation and the generations who did handwriting were because they're missing that one link. I just heard that the other day, and I'm like, wow.
That is an interesting point. That's one of the things that I talk about as well, because there's so many times today we are memorizing more than ever before, but our ability to apply what we learn into logic isn't the same as it used to be. Today, there's a lot of memorization. Not that we didn't memorize before, but it's stronger today that logic. And I think as you're saying, how you get out there on that tractor and you learn how to drive the tractor, you learn how to plow the fields, you learn how to harvest the grain, you learn how to do things and how it all comes together. Where now there's a lot of times we just memorize.
Well, and right now, too,
And
in Harvard classes, like university classes, they're not allowing computers because they found out that people who take handwritten notes retain the information better. So it also
better.
can help you stop Alzheimer's and all kinds of things.
That's impressive. That's almost amazing. I had not heard that. But
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
back to Jessie, your
yes, yes,
mother,
Jesse.
and yes, from a childhood to the hardship with a Colorado cattle ranch to
Oh,
Smith College to the
yes.
front lines of the suffrage movement to speaking across the United States to thousands of people, it's almost impossible to fully absorb that from the time that she was here. And that the more you researched her life, the more extraordinary she became, right?
Yeah, I knew her, and she raised me and took me around with her when she spoke with Gloria Steinem, Marla Thomas, and Jane Fonda in Hollywood all the time in her 90s. But then I wrote this book. It's her memoir, and I'm the archivist of the family. You were talking about that. And I found her memoir, which I knew she had written, but I knew it hadn't been published, even though she had published other books. And uh, so I found it and I cut it from 600 pages to 300 readable pages, because it was a lot of stuff in there. And I had to improve it because back then people wrote in was words and we're not doing that anymore. So I took out 100 was words, some you can't avoid. And I got this book out in March 2020, just as COVID hit. So I had to reinvent myself and I went online and I started speaking all over the world. I didn't know I could do that. I thought I'd be speaking in California where I live, DC where she worked, London where she worked, all those things. But so I started speaking 1 to 4 times a week. I've been doing that now the last 5 years because
Congratulations.
I didn't know I could do that, but I had to reinvent myself. And then I heard, so that almost worked out better than me just going in person, and I still speak in person. But this is her book, and we made her Andy Warhol look so that she would be the modern woman because she was the modern woman. Another thing she did that most people don't realize is she put together the Pulitzer School of Journalism as her second job out at Smith. And she had a terrible childhood, tragic. But a teacher saw how brilliant she was and got her into Smith College. And then there must have been a star above her head because she did all these things. She even taught public speaking to Eleanor Roosevelt. And a funny story about that is Eleanor would say, Jesse, just bring the whole class over to the White House and we'll all rehearse together. If you can imagine, before guards and protocols. And so they had a great time. And then Jesse wrote a book called Time to Speak Up. Now, this is funny because this is my signature book. And I teach how to write the short book and use it as your flag and, to get emails and clients. Well, in 1946, she finished a book called Time to Speak Up. And she was funny because she was in the, what is that group? The Christian Scientists. And they had
Um,
this really good networking, and they were bigger back then. And so she did was she called her friend from Boston and said, yeah, I just wrote a book all summer. She and my grandfather had bought a house from FDR, who he worked for FDR. He put together the whole Social Security system with 2,000 people under him for FDR when it first came out. and he sold them a little shack. He was building small homes as housing for people, and they bought one as a summer hideaway. And so she wrote it in 3 months while she stayed there. And then she called her friend and said, "Yeah, I just wrote a book this summer. Time to speak up." Now imagine this, Mark. This is my dream. And he said, "Oh, just send it to me. I'll publish it for you in Harper and Collins." So he published her
Wow.
book. She toured the whole United States with 202,000 people at every stop, and her book sold like hotcakes. Just what I'm teaching now, which I didn't realize when I wrote the book. I started teaching that later after I had mentors and had to reinvent myself with COVID. Anyway, so she went around and she sold her book like hotcakes, and that's what we're doing. We're writing our little short books, and it makes you the expert, so that people will want to work with you. And almost every time I speak, I get a client because people say, "Oh my God, she really knows what she's talking about," and I can help them publish their books. But she did it in 1946, which I think is remarkable. And I didn't know that when I first did her book. And this book is very different. It has 98 rare pictures, invitations with Eleanor and the Queen. And here's George
Wow.
Shaw. She was his speaking partner, George Bernard Shaw, and a letter from George Bernard Shaw. And all these things. So, well, most books you don't want to put that many pictures in, but I had so many rare things they just needed to go in. And it took 8 samples. That's a great thing about KDP is they give you samples. So with this book, one sample, just little 70-page flag handout. But with that book, 300 pages with 98 rare pictures, because of the pictures, it took 8 samples. Most book will take 2 samples, but that's one of the best attributes of KDP. But anyway, that's my grandmother's book. And then, she died in 1986, so I got to be close to her
Mm.
again.
Mhm.
And I tear up all when I talk about her because we were so close all the time.
That is so wonderful, though, to have that kind of relationship. And you're talking about KDP, that's Kindle Direct Publishing.
Kindle Direct Publishing. It doesn't mean
Okay.
for Kindle books. It means for all your formats. Paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. You can get done for free. I know how to do that. I helped someone do it today, and so you want to. And I say, Mark, do all of the formats because it's real estate.
Hmm. Interesting statement. It's real estate.
Yes, do it all.
A
Like
book.
like a lot of people are doing these anthologies, and all they'll do is the paperback. But they should be doing
Mhm.
it all because that gives all the people who are, paying to be in their anthologies or participating more clout, more
Hmm.
more notice. You know what I mean? Like I do
Okay.
the Cinderella Monologues, and then we make it in this is a hardcover, and we do the paperback. Then you wait. Listen to this, guys. Do not do your ebook first, or you'll ruin all your sales and you won't get the book in people's hands and on their shelves, which is my main point.
Mhm.
And so you do your paperback, and then you wait 3 weeks or a month. Then you do your ebook and your hardcover because you don't want them to compete for bestseller. And as soon as your ebook is ready, you can put it right on to KDP's sister company called ACX and start your audiobook, and you can find these readers who will do it for free. Some people want to charge, but find those free readers that sound good. They'll audition for you. So there's a lot of that little
Excellent.
layers to do.
You know, all kinds of knowledge, but that takes me back to your grandma
Yes.
because she was not just what you might call present in history. She was making history,
Yes.
working alongside, like you've said, Alice Paul, Carrie Chapman Catt, befriending the Lady Nancy Astor, the first woman to sit in the British Parliament. And then, as you mentioned, later having Eleanor Roosevelt, First Lady.
Yeah, Jessie was the first woman lobbyist at the Capitol.
The first woman lobbyist at the
Uh-huh.
Capitol.
And she was a lobbyist for the movement. She was first there because her second job after Pulitzer School of Journalism was to put together in Boston. Because back then, if it happened in Boston, then it happened all over the country. But it had to happen there first. She was on a commission to set the first minimum wage, if you can imagine, from $4 a week to $8 a week, and to get the children out of the factories. So that was her first job. And then they sent her down to DC to become the first woman lobbyist and do it. And that was, see, Pulitzer School of journalism was 1911. This is about 1915. So she set the first minimum wage for the women in America.
Wow.
And
That's impressive.
I know, because if you can imagine. And then she helped them get the vote. And Alice Paul, very interesting. This is very interesting. I would have thought she was the hippie of the era, but I don't think they had hippies then. Maybe bohemians. But she was from a very wealthy Quaker family. And you'll love this. She went to England, London, to get her PhD at the London School of Economics, and she did. And that's when she met Emmeline Pankhurst, who was a radical suffragette. And so, suffragist, they have to debate that. And so she learned how to do all the thing, feed, be a martyr, get fed through the nose with the tubes, and that's where she did it there. She didn't do it in America, but her women did. So then she came back and she rented a house with the money from a very wealthy woman across from the White House, and she served lunch every day, cafeteria style, to the women who were working, so they wouldn't have to run off and eat, and they couldn't afford it anyway. And so Jessie was invited to have lunch with her every day at her house. And
Mhm.
she always wanted Jessie to become the militant with her, but Jessie was a parliamentarian because she worked, with Congress. And so she worked with Carrie Chapman Catt more, who was parliamentarian. And Carrie Chapman Catt was older. Jessie and Alice were the same age. And Carrie was a lot older because Carrie had been the young one working with Susan B. Anthony. And when Susan B. Anthony retired, she handed the baton to Cherry Chapman Catt. So so then Jessie
Wow.
worked with both of them, but they had a falling out in the beginning because Alice didn't want to include men. She wanted to be militant, and Carrie wanted to be a parliamentarian and include the men because they had to vote for it, right? I mean, you have to convince the men first. But Jessie always said that if we didn't have both of them, we wouldn't have got the vote in 1920 because in England, they didn't get till 1928. Now, I see you're all sitting down. In Switzerland, they didn't get the right to vote until 1971. When
It's
I heard that on the radio,
1971.
I had to pull my car over when I heard that on NPR. I had to pull my car over. I was so shocked.
Wow. That's just wow. That's amazing. It's thank you for bringing that up. Because as we think about this, how many of us have mothers and grandmothers? Well, of course we all do. But for those of you that are here today listening and listening to what Mila is saying, mothers can do this. Grandmothers can do this. And as I continually say, life is what we make it. So let's make it awesome together, achieving that unity by working together. This is this is something that you all can do. We all can do. But on that same token, Mila, as you talk about this, have you found that telling Jesse's story in detail with all of those connections that's there actually helps audiences understand that history was shaped by a network of women supporting and including each other?
Yes, and it's so important to point all that out. That's why I'm a historian and I love telling history because I think it can almost make the biggest difference. One time I thought I should stop and be a history teacher and just because I thought I could make the biggest difference. And Jessie knew that. She studied everything. She studied with Young or one of the big psychiatrists in London and she met George Bernard Shaw and he had her speak with him all over London. I have articles of them speaking together in the book. And the reason is she was a teetotaler and he was a teetotaler and a vegetarian, by the way. And he didn't believe in liquor, so she had a great talk about prohibition, and he made her his partner so she could corroborate what he was saying. And one of the articles says, "Liquor is just like murder." Is I think the name of the article. I know. And so they spoke all over London together, and then she met Lady Astor, who married the richest man in the world, and he was in Parliament, and she was an American, and she sat in Parliament for 28 years, helping laborers and children, and she was an American from a very middle class family in Virginia, and she had 6 children. She was a Christian Scientist too. My grandmother wasn't totally that, but she was. And she had 6 children with no doctor, no midwife, no nothing, because they don't believe in all that
Wow.
stuff. Like, she was really an amazing, amazing woman. Oh, and here's another thing, Mark. You will
That
love
is
this
amazing.
historically. I have the biggest collection of letters from Lady Esther in the world
I was,
to
that's
my
my
grandmother.
next, I love that. Because if you found one of the most moving parts of researching Jesse's life was discovering those personal letters, including 19 letters, I believe if I've got my numbers right, from Lady Nancy Astor, probably the largest collection in the world, and that those letters gave you a window into a friendship between two women who were quietly changing the world together.
That's my next
What?
book, to put the letters in a book, then back. See, Jessie did a Xerox machine, so I have her letters back and forth. And oh, and the other 8 letters I found in the world that I think might be the only other letters, but I could be wrong, was to her best friend Lawrence of Arabia,
Wow.
Lady Esther. She was best friends with George Bernard Shaw, Lady Charlie Chaplin. Because she's very wealthy. She would have these huge balls at her house, 9,000 people at a time, and she'd feed them all. And she didn't like liquor, so she'd have a little tiny liquor room that if anyone had to go drink liquor, they could go in, but she didn't serve it. She was an amazing person, I think, maybe.
It is amazing. And when we think about it, and that's what I touch on in my high school class, graduating class, we had the first woman high school president.
Oh.
And she was a very close friend of mine. We actually shared a locker together. But it was just the steps that, as you mentioned earlier, what women have gone through all our lives and the challenge that is there
Mhm.
every day. But the women who do stand up and work with who they need to work with to go forward and build a better tomorrow. I mean, back to Jessie, she was still sharing a platform, a podium with Gloria Steinem at the age of 92, right?
Up till
She
94. Her last speech was
94.
age 94, and she took me along all the time. I worked for Jane Fonda after that too, because she was there sometimes.
Wow. Wow. But she dedicated her entire life
Uh-huh.
from the young suffrage
Uh-huh.
to elder stateswoman to the advancement of women's voices that we benefit from today. Have you found that that kind of lifelong commitment to a cause is something that gets passed, something gets passed down, not just through her words, but through example, and that maybe you absorbed her dedication in many ways
Hmm.
simply by being near her?
I wasn't going to be like her. And I've turned totally into her, because when she passed away, the Now Women, National Organization of Women came to me and said, "Are you going to march in her place?" And I wasn't very flippant then. I was kind of shy. I went, "No, my grandmother told me I'm already emancipated from the work she did. I'm going to go live my life." But I have become her in organics, and for us not spraying and poisoning ourselves and our children. And so I speak out about that very, very much. And then I also, do the Cinderella Monologues, which is women telling their stories, because women have been the most marginalized population on the planet all through time. And that's one of my flags now, that I'm saying this, because I think we need to realize, and I'm always surprised, because I've always felt kind of free, and I married a very progressive man, but I'm always surprised when I meet women who still feel downtrodden and that they're not equal. Now, today, it shocks me.
Oh, yeah.
And I try to encourage them and say, "Well, tell your story, because it will really help you." Like, oh my gosh, the story in our last Cinderella monologues about a woman who escaped a cult, born into it, didn't know there was anything else, thought everyone did it, I finally got away. She's one of my best friends in my own town, which usually I have people from Canada and all of America. But anyway, so women, but she was afraid to tell her story. I go, "If you tell your story, I think it will help you heal. And other women need to hear this, because
Yes.
they were in one. And then I've met 2 other women who had been in cults. Now they're telling their story. And you know what? She told me recently, she goes, "I was so afraid, Mila. I almost didn't do it. But now that my story is told, I'm starting to speak about it." So I think we need to, like you said, air things out. Air it out. let's just talk about it, because that is that's her story. Like my story of growing up in poverty in gangland, I'm writing my book, Cinderella Interrupted, and I couldn't write it for years. I'd start writing. Now, this might happen to some of you. You start writing and you go, oh, I can't face it, you know. And suddenly when I turned into my 50s, I went, you know what? It's my story. I own it and I could do it. And I left out a few parts.
Beautiful.
In the book at the end of some chapters, I'll go, and then, no, wait a minute. I can't even go to that part. Okay, I just won't tell that part. And, I do say it like talking to you. I would say that in the book. So you can see I was going to write my book, my memoir, The Cinderella Monologues. But then I realized all these other women were coming to me with their stories, that it needed to be more women than me. So now I'm calling my memoir Cinderella Interrupted.
I love that title.
You do?
Cinderella Interrupted.
Uh-huh.
And that has happened so many times. Don't take this wrong. I'm 100% male. There is no doubt about it. But what I have seen is I have made the mistakes, so many of them that we talk about today that men make.
Mm,
And I have made a lot of those mistakes, but I have also been crucified in a divorce system that
mm,
went the other way. I
mhm.
also know a woman that is very beautiful and very intelligent, but still lets a lot of those things hold her back.
You
And
need
so
to
what
tell your story so other men can know that they're not the only one going through that, maybe.
I belong to several a large number of groups helping men going through divorce and custody
Oh,
and being a parent and not knowing how to be a parent because I didn't either. Because when I grew up, the man was the macho, the man was the worker. We worked all day long, came home, read the paper, smoked our pipe, drank our beer, and that was kind of the thought. And well, don't take me wrong, I enjoyed my beer, didn't like the cigars, but it was the way we learn it. And there's so much today. As I talk about how many homeless people don't know any other way.
I know. My brother was one.
And that may be shocking to a lot of people. But as you mentioned the person earlier, what we learn is what we do.
Mhm.
Life is what we make it, but we can't make it any more than it is if we don't know that there is a Cinderella story out there for everyone who wants to read it. Right?
Yes, and in this book here, well, this is the third one. We're going to do the fourth one now. We're celebrating the 250th anniversary of women, of America. And so women are telling their stories from their ancestors. Some are just telling their stories of struggle to success. But like in the last one, we had a nun tell her story how she became a nun, but then she just realized it wasn't for her and she got out. And another woman telling her story how she feels everything in art through taste. It's called synthethesia. I've helped her write a children's book. And then we had another woman talk about angels, and then another woman told her story of escaping a cult, which was gripping story. And then other people talked about business, how to go on with their business. So it's all different things. One person talked about being bullied in the workplace by another woman. I mean, there's all kinds of stories, and women have it. And I'm looking for a few more Cinderellas for the next book, but this is the last book, Women, and we are such a tribe. We're going to be doing a summit soon, and we've got 4 books, so now I have enough women to do a summit. You know, I'm really excited about the stories coming out in this next book. Oh my gosh, there's actually in this next book is another woman who escaped a cult, a different kind of cult, a Christian cult, and then but she didn't know any better either. She just thought, that's the way it is. That's She was raised in it again, which is, I had no idea there were so many women who had escaped cults till this happened. And trauma is a big subject. And then, I'd like to mix the book with lighthearted stories, and then maybe serious, and then maybe devastating. And I curate the book. You want to do that. You curate the book so it's, maybe longer chapter, short chapter, different stories. So you're not reading like, oh, a divorce, that kind of thing.
And let me ask this also for anyone who goes out to milajohansen.com, aren't you also looking for people who have those stories?
Yes, we've got almost our book full, but we need about five more stories right now. And it's great opportunity because I do it all. I've been in 10 anthologies with people. I say do it all when you can. I do the cheaper ones or when I trade because I don't believe in paying thousands and thousands of dollars to be in an anthology. Don't do that. Mine's only like really reasonable, under $1,000, but that's because it costs that much to get my people to do the work and put the book together. And we make our books beautiful, but the thing is, it's good to be in one because you know what? It gives you so much clout, and we do a beautiful job, picture in your bio and all this stuff, but it gives you advertising for what you're doing. And it also, like with the woman who did the cult, she wasn't really advertising what she's doing, but now she's got, afterwards she took her chapter and expanded it, used it as an outline, and created her 200-page book, and she just published it 2 months ago. And
Beautiful.
I know, and now she's speaking about it. And now she says, Mila, I'm just feeling healed by it. I didn't know I needed to tell me. She was afraid. She was afraid of what people would think of her. So it's a healing process. It's a great process. A lot of people are taking their chapters and creating their longer book later. I've had several people do that. I've had a couple people from the first Cinderella monologues create huge companies and they become millionaires. So you never know what's going to happen. It gives you a little chutzpah, a little confidence, and to be with all these other women. And it's just been a really great time with me. I thought at the first book that would be it, but I kept going. And I think the next one I want to do is about divorce and marriage and other ways of being, uh, in relationships. So, just different ideas because I used to know a couple that lived in two houses next door to each other and would invite each other over. You don't have to be like this, oh, we're in your face all the time. So even my husband and I, we kind of go our separate ways all day, running around the house doing, we're a project house. And then when we go on vacation, oh, how have you been? I think it's healthy because we've been together like 45 years. So
Congratulations.
I know.
That's awesome.
I know. So there's a lot of ways of doing things. And I think people reading other people's stories, I call it inspiring the world one story at a time.
And those can be very, very short stories also. And I
They're
think that's one
short.
of the things that you're saying is that there's some stories that are a page, there's some stories that are a chapter, and there's some stories that are a book. But every one makes a difference in our lives, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Have
And
you
for a lot of you too, if that's something, you're thinking about, you really want to make some money with books, do anthology. I have an anthology class, how to do anthologies with a list. And I'm writing a book. This book is 70 pages, but I've expanded it to a 200-page book called The Bible of Self-Publishing. But in that book, I go through every single blow, like bullet by bullet. Click this, click that, click this. Is what I do with people. I hold their hand. I go, okay, now I did two people this morning already. Click there. Okay, now move over there to the top right. Now click that. So people just want people to hold their hand. That's how I started. I thought I would pay pretty much anything if someone would hold my hand through my first book. I mean, I've been traditionally published years ago with some of these, but and I
but
thought that. Then I thought once I knew how to do it, I went, well, maybe people need to pay me, or they would like to, pay a small fee to learn how to do it.
an affordable fee, as you're saying, it's just
Mhm.
so beneficial to so many. But let me ask you another question. We have about 10 more minutes, 11 more minutes. Have you found that, and as we look at it in this month of May, as we celebrate Mother's Day, that there's a particular opportunity to look back across the generations of women in our town, in our own families, and finally name what they gave us? And that naming what they gave us out loud, honoring it publicly to within itself is a form of carrying the legacy that the women have accomplished forward. That just to say
Yeah.
what we've done, what the women have done.
I heard years ago, my mother was a very troubled woman because she, in the 20s, was trying to get away from, well, it was a little later, the strictures that started in Boston. Like, oh, everybody has to shake your hand and do all these proper things and don't say this and don't say that. We kind of came from that. Now the 60s kind of broke us free from that. But a psychiatrist, a woman I know who's a psychiatrist, told me that there's a whole book about that, how the women of that age, that particular age, when they were still giving frontal lobotomies to women. And we all think the 50s was so perfect. Well, it wasn't. There was a lot going on. And so I'd like to study all that and air it out. And she said there's a whole book about that generation of women who almost gave up our lives and went crazy themselves so that our generation could be free. So it's just what you're saying, right?
It is, and that is so true. And when I talk about unity, I'm talking about workers. I'm not talking about just a couple, even though I am talking about couples. I'm about people that we work with people we've met, people who we've passed on the street. Unity is about working with each other. And let me touch on this, take that just little bit off to the side. But your first edition of the Cinderella Monologues brought together stories of women who became lawyers after they turned 40, who
Yes.
survived
Yes.
abusive household, who escaped Vietnam as boat people, as
Yes.
people who fought cancer, lives that look completely different on the surface, but still share that one essential thread, right?
You're
That
right, because I love the Vietnam
unity.
stories. I love those two. There were two women who who came over as the boat people as toddlers, and I thought that was fascinating. We don't realize the boat people were back then, and thank you for bringing that up. I just think that's so valuable.
It's impressive. And what people can do, and that's what I do with Achieving Unity. It's so strong because haven't we found that when readers, learners, however they may learn, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times it's what we don't know. But when the readers, the learners encounter that variety of experience, like in your book, all held together by that single thread of resilience, that unity, something shifts in how they see their own life story.
Well, isn't it like Geraldo and Donahue and Oprah, a lot of women, when they were molested, thought they were the only one until these shows came out. And they're going, oh, you mean I'm one of millions? So it made them feel better, I think. I think airing it out, like I said, that kind of thing. I was fortunate. None of that stuff happened to me. We didn't have any fathers in the house, so things like that. But 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 I really think the stories really help other women understand that we've all been through things. Motherhood can be hard. There's not a lot, like you said, there's not a lot of training for it. I homeschooled my daughter all the way through 8th grade, and we had a great time and gave us all this time to go on vacation. We went all over the place, and we did things outside. I'm doing another book on how to homeschool your kid and not have them hate you. Like, don't sit too long, don't sit more than an hour, let's go do things. So I did that, and I think that's another thing we need to talk about. I loved my daughter. My niece didn't have a lot of support, so she was with us for like 8 of those years, and she got to go on vacations that she would have never went on before. And it got my husband out of the house. He would do it for the kids more than me in some ways. That happens sometimes. So there's a lot of psychology and a lot to that. And I'm so glad I got to homeschool her, because if you're going to have a kid, why not be with them? And not everyone can do that. But for us, it was like it worked out because we went and did real things. So, I mean, I think being a mother is probably one of the
Well,
biggest blessings of my life.
Mila, my dad would never have thought that. In the life I was raised in, the way we were brought up, that was a mother's job if it existed at all. That's
Mhm.
some of the things that I work on today, that a
Yes.
mother or a father
Yes.
can be great parents at whatever they do, from homeschooling, working in a factory, to being the CEO of the largest company in the world. Because as I talk about these things, and I mentioned earlier, I work with men and women, mothers and fathers, male and female, to learn that we can do what we can do with what we learn. And that's where we must start, right?
Right. And I think what you're doing is so important, because I think fathers
Thank you.
need those men's groups, and they need to see what it's like to be like. But, a lot of the movies are coming out where the men are the fathers and not sure what to do. And then they grow up and they become a good father. And I think it's become more popular to be a good father now than in the old days. Like you said, it was more macho, like, okay, well, you do the housework and the kids, and I'll bring home the bacon. And I still have a few friends who live with men like that, hardly any. But I think it's more popular to be a good father now, or at least pretend to be a good father. I mean, most of them are. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
It's not pretend, but it's to make that step. That's what we all
Yes.
have to do. That's what I talk about. Taking that next step. Listening and dialogue, learning about it.
Yeah.
Write it down without a doubt. Break it down. What am I learning? And then review the dependencies that are there. And there are dependencies there, and then get it done. But then
Hmm.
always start back to listening and dialogue, learning from it. Write it down. Break it down. View those dependencies again, then get it done. But that's where we all need to work together going forward to make the world a better place everywhere we go.
My husband said an interesting thing. He everybody's going to have a baby, and he deals with a lot of men. He's on the water board and everything. He on both sides, politically, and he said he goes up to them. He goes, "Now remember, be sure you're in line to change diapers because that's when you have the relationship with the baby." So he tells me that.
And we need to know that. That's one thing we grew up to know that's somebody else's job.
Hmm?
And so it was accepted. And then we learn to accept it, but then we get burned by it because it builds that gap.
Hmm.
It digs that hole. It puts that gap that we then have to cross, which becomes a challenge that shouldn't have been there to begin with. We've all got to work together in that
And
process.
kids, the only thing kids want is your time. They really want to just be with you until they grow up and they want their little machines or whatever. But really, they just want you to be there with them. That's all. And it's so simple. So we just have to make that time. And I was lucky to be an older mother at 38, and I had the time to be with her all the time. And I ran a huge theater company with all these plays behind me and everything, but still, it was something she could do. She could be there with the other kids in the theater company. So, and then we were homeschooling, and not everyone can do that. But when you do have the time, even if it's just a little bit of time, that's all the kid wants. They just want to be with you.
Mhm.
Nothing else matters, especially when they're young.
That's where it all starts. Well, as we get ready to close, we're getting close to the end of the podcast. But with what Jesse built and what the women in your Cinderella monologues are building, and
Yes.
what every mother quietly builds over a lifetime is a community of courage that expands with every generation. Have you found that the best way to honor the mothers who shaped us all is not just to remember what they did, but for each of us, like yourself, to do something with what they gave us to begin with,
Well, and
right?
maybe do something for them. Walk into your house and say, "Mom," or just do the dishes. Don't even talk about it. Do favors, do little things. Take them out to lunch. I mean, that's another thing. Mothers just want to have your time.
Hmm?
We just
They,
want to
that's
spend time with you. Like if my daughter invites me to do something and I have a meeting, I'll sometimes postpone the meeting if I can and go with her because they're not always going to invite you. So, so like this Mother's Day, she wants to do something she wants to do, but I want to be with her, so I'm going to go do it. You know what I mean? So take those invitations. Don't take them lightly, and
mhm.
mainly remember if you're the younger person and your mother wants time with you, so do that favor. Take her out to lunch, cook her
And it
dinner.
can a simple favor, like you're saying, something simple. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be large. We need to stop making things big. We
right.
need it's and quit finding wrong. Look for something right.
Hmm.
Say something good. Nice dress, nice color, something beneficial. Wow. Thank you,
Small. I
Mila.
like how you're saying small. Let's think small and big, but start small.
Think small to build big. We
Oh,
need the
hey, you should put that on
foundation.
your thing. That's a very good statement.
Thank you.
I
Because
like
that's how we build the foundation.
that.
We
Yeah,
can't build a structure if we don't have a foundation for it to stand on, right?
right.
Think
That's
small
another thing
to
about
build
writing. Let
big.
me just say really quick that I always tell people 20 minutes a day is the word on the street. We don't have to do these huge 2 hour stints. Just what you're saying. So 20 minutes a day built up to a book. Toni Morrison only had 15 minutes a day because she was working and she had kids. And then she became a famous novelist. Even 5 minutes a day adds up to a book. So think small,
But go forward.
but
Think
do
small,
it. Do it.
but build forward.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Mila, for joining us today and for sharing your insight and your experience. This has been a meaningful conversation to me, and I know to our listeners in the audience listening today as they listen to it on the recording, because it will be on YouTube. What strikes me most about your story is this: change does not always begin on the grand stage. Sometimes it begins in a home with a grandmother who chose courage, or a mother who modeled strength when no one else was watching, where they were not going to receive any major success, would not be a party, but it's the kind of legacy that lasts. Mila, you've not only honored that legacy, but you also live it day to day, and you help others find their own voice along that way. Thank you so much for what you do. So, to our audience, if today's conversation has moved you in any way, I strongly encourage you to go out to milajohansen.com, Mila, M-I-L-A, Johansen, Johansen.com, and get her book, From Cowgirl to Congress, the story of her grandmother, Jessie's incredible journey. I almost puts tears in my eyes to talk about it. But go out to that, milajohansen.com, check out the book. Just look up this title of the book, From Cowgirl to Congress. Excuse me. Look that up on the internet. You can find Mila at milajohansen.com. Thank you all for being with us today on the Achieving Unity Leadership System, AULS. It's your weekly podcast. Keep growing, keep giving, and remember, your voice matters. So as we close today's conversation, I hope one thing has become clear. Real change happens when vision meets action and when people come together with purpose. Thank you, Mila, for being a very valued guest today on the Achieving Unity Leadership System podcast and for helping us continue turning pain into purpose and disconnection into unity. Mila, do you have any last minute comments or just something you want to say before we close?
Oh, I had something. um,
And it's one of those
well,
things that's
I know. My superpower is giving. And even when I was a kid with nothing, I would give the shirt off my back. I'd just go to the thrift store and get another one. So my superpower has always been giving. So it doesn't give all you can in all the ways you can in all the times you can, because all it does is bring it to back to you tenfold. That's not why I do it, but it always happens to me. I mean, I live in a huge home now and on two ranches, and we don't have a lot of money, but I'm good. You know, I have all the food I need, and I have all these farmers who work with me, and so give, and it will all come back to you. Don't ever be afraid to give more than you think you should.
beautiful. Mila, that is awesome. And as you spoke to us today, for all of the audience, if you want to go deeper with Mila, connect with her on LinkedIn, search for her on the internet, milajohansen.com. Go look at her site. And I hope you took a picture of the slide earlier in the podcast with Mila's QR codes. If not, this full podcast will be available on YouTube at Mark Intrican before the close of business on Friday. So when you wake up on Saturday morning, listen to the video as you enjoy your morning beverage. As Achieving Unity continues to resonate with you, follow that feeling. Reach out, connect with me, www.achievingunity.com, www.markintrican.com. Let's connect and make that connection powerful. Each step of the way, think small, build large. So until next time, let us continue to transform complexity into execution, chaos into connection, and our purposes into action. Let us continue achieving unity, which I hope you'll always remember. If you ever want to talk, 303 focused on your phone keypad, because we can stay focused, as I mentioned earlier, listening in dialogue, writing it down, breaking it down, review those dependencies, and get it done for better collaboration and communication as we achieve unity by harnessing the true power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others in building better businesses, better lives, and a better world. And that's one of the things that we learned today that Mila brought to us. So thank you, Mila. Appreciate you so much. This is Mark Intrican with the Achieving Unity Leadership System, reminding you that life is truly what we make it. So let us help everyone around us feel seen, heard, and supported in everyday moments that truly matter and make life awesome together in unity. So thank you all. Thank you again, Mila, for your message and for helping us understand that when leaders tell their story, they align purpose, people, and execution so the results will follow. Thank you again, Mila, for helping us make that alignment real, practical, and achievement. Your presence today, being a guest in this podcast, is going to touch so many people. So, everyone, it will be out on YouTube. I hope to see you all again next week. And our next step in remembering unity is not a soft skill, it is truly a positive leadership discipline. Till then, cheers.